Chiefs and Eagles are what we thought they were. All right, welcome here. It's the Breer Report for October the 21st. As you can see, I am away from my home office. We're in New York for an NFL owners meeting, their fall meeting here in Midtown, and we are recapping Week 7, which is now in the books. And we're going to start with the last thing we saw, which is the Seattle Seahawks, again, showing us who they are. And I think the biggest story when you look at Seattle is how they took where they were before the season, and now they've gone to another level with it. I felt the same way about the Seahawks. I felt about the Packers coming into the year, and people who've heard me talk about the Packers have heard this before. A lot of good young players. Can they become great? And I think what we're starting to see in Seattle is good young players elevating themselves, elevating the team. Charles Cross looks like a franchise left tackle. You see the running back duo of Walker and Charbonnet, a really, really good run game there. Jackson Smith and Jigba becoming one of the best players at his position in all of the NFL. Sam Darnold, again, looks like last year was no fluke now. The touchdown throw he made to JSN right down the pipe with a Texans defender bearing down on him. One of the best throws I think we've seen all year. And so this Seattle team is now set up where they're even with the Rams, they're even with the Niners, and they're very much in that race because, again, they've got this core of young players, a lot of them coming from the Capitol, resulting from the Russell Wilson trade, elevating from good, promising players to very good or great players. That's JSN, that's Charles Cross, that's Zach Charbonnet, that's Kenneth Walker III. That's on the defensive side of the ball. Guys like Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, they've got a really good young core of players that should continue to elevate. I should mention Byron Murphy in there. And this is a team that's really good right now, as we saw last night in beating a good Texans team that I think has a chance to take another step. All right, my second big takeaway from Week 7, the Lions are back where we thought they'd be. And to me, this is such a great example of how Week 1 tells us absolutely nothing. After Week 1, people were questioning Jared Goff. People were questioning Dan Campbell's program and how big a part of the program Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn were. And I'm not saying they weren't a big part of the program, but the idea that those losses would be insurmountable, that came up. A lot of people picked them to miss the playoffs. And what we're seeing now is the strength of the program wasn't just about the coaches. It was about the players. It was about how well GM Brad Holmes and his department drafted over the last few years. And it's about a group of young players that continue to ascend and get better. And those young players keep developing for this Lions team. They do it without Brian Branch last night. Of course, he was suspended after the incident last week. You look down the list, though. Aiden Hutchinson, one of the best young players at his position. Jack Campbell showing up in a lot of key spots. Amon-Ra St. Brown, the ultimate chain mover. Jameson Williams, I think, it wasn't a huge night for him last night, but we know what he can do and what he's becoming. Penei Sewell, one of the best young linemen in football. Jahmyr Gibbs at the running back position, over 200 yards from scrimmage. So you look at that Lions team, and again, this is a team that's still ascending, still getting better. And they look to me right now like maybe the most complete team in the NFL. And I'm not saying that means they're the best team in the NFL because we all know what the Chiefs and the Eagles are capable of. We're going to get to those two teams in a second. But just when you look at their roster, they may be the most complete team in the NFL now. And it's because they've drafted and developed at such a high level. And again, that's taking nothing away from what Ben Johnson did over the course of the last few years in Detroit. And we see how good a coach he is now in Chicago. Maybe less so with Aaron Glenn with the Jets, but Aaron Glenn did a bonkers job in rebuilding that defense over the course of his 4 years in Detroit. But the program was able to sustain. Dan Campbell was able to reach into his network, go and get John Morton and Kelvin Shepard to run the offense and the defense. And the talent that they've assembled, the core of players that they've assembled has shown through. The Lions, once again, for the third straight year, a very serious threat to get to the Super Bowl. All right, that brings me to my final takeaway. The Chiefs and Eagles are what we thought they were. Again, for all the drama over the first few weeks, or the Chiefs this or the Chiefs that, can the Eagles deal with all of the moving parts on their roster and all of the different storylines? And Philly is coming down on them for X, Y, and Z. They're still two of the most talented teams in football. They're still two of the best run teams in football. It doesn't mean that they'll meet in Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara, but they will be in that mix, injury permitting. We can start with the Eagles and where they're at. to me, what Sunday's game was another display of, after that tough 5-day stretch where, you blow the lead against the Broncos on Sunday, and then somehow you get blown out by the Giants on Thursday. You're able to bounce back and put together the sort of performance they put together. And the way I look at this, it shows the different gears that they have, and it shows their ability to toggle from one type of game to another type of game. And look, like, teams have done a better job dealing with that run game. Teams have done a better job against their offensive line. Teams have done a better job containing Saquon Barkley. And so the run game is held to 2 yards per carry. So can you counterpunch? And the Eagles can certainly counterpunch. That game by Jalen Hurts is maybe the greatest value of Jalen Hurts, is that his mentality, his mindset, he's got an ability to compartmentalize things. He's got an ability to work through things. And when things are going bad, he can be a bellwether in the storm. And he's a different type of personality. He's maybe not the way you would draw it up as far as the battleship commander quarterback, but his steadiness through the storm, I think, showed again here. Perfect passer rating. I think this is the first time in forever, if the first time ever, the Eagles have had a perfect passer rating. Nick Sirianni told me after the game that it was the first time he'd ever had a quarterback in all of his years coaching with a perfect passer rating. And then between Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, over 300 yards receiving. And for all that talk about, like, do they shop A.J. Brown? Are they trading A.J. Brown? This is why they were never trading A.J. Brown. And this is why it's not going to happen in season. I'm not saying it can't happen after the season. They're so invested in the present. They have pushed all their chips into the middle of the table. Again, the way their roster's built, the way their cap is set up, is to win right now. It would make no sense to pull a piece like that out without having the ability to replace him. And right now, A.J. Brown's one of the most irreplaceable players on that team. Again, doesn't mean they can't replace him in the offseason. There are ways to do it, but you can't do it right now. And this is a team capable of competing for a championship. And then as for the Chiefs, I think everybody who jumps on them every year at the beginning of the year is bound to look foolish. As long as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are there, as long as Brett Veach is the general manager, the two coordinators they have are outstanding, and Matt Nagy and Steve Spagnuolo, the operation is going to carry through. And this is very much the Patriots of Brady and Belichick, where they'll spend the first part of the season figuring things out. They'll figure out what they're good at. They'll figure out what their identity needs to be as a team. They'll lean into it. And the Chiefs are starting to figure that out. And Patrick Mahomes, according to those who are coaching him, who are working with him on a day-to-day basis, is playing at as high a level as he's ever played. And now he's getting his best weapon, Rashee Rice, back, who had 2 touchdowns on Sunday, who's making a difference already in the red zone. That's going to only make Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown and everyone else there more effective. You've got an interesting young weapon to use in Brashard Smith. You'll eventually get Josh Simmons back. The offensive line looks a lot better and deeper than it's been the last couple of years. And Spagnuolo's defense is Spagnuolo's defense, and we're seeing that. This is going to be a team that is going to be a very difficult out in January and has a chance to go to a record-tying 4th straight Super Bowl. And I'm not surprised, and you shouldn't be surprised either. Again, I'm not saying we're going to get Chiefs Eagles. I think this will be the 3rd time in 4 years. I'm not saying we're getting that matchup again in Santa Clara, but I think both teams will be in the mix to make that happen. Appreciate you guys coming out. As always, you can leave your comments on YouTube just below, or you can get to me on social media at Albert Breer on Twitter, at Albert R. Breer on Facebook, at Albert_Breer on Instagram. We'll be back at you tomorrow with a video mailbag. See you guys then.